Thank you. Roll call.
Mrs. Maroney?
Here.
Mrs. Ward?
Here.
Mrs. Madiker?
Here.
Mr. Derrico?
Here.
Mrs. Peng?
Here.
Mr. Brescher?
Here.
Mrs. DeStefano?
Here.
Mrs. Patel?
Here.
All present by Mr. Shi.
We will now read the opening statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed and acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Edison Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board of Education administrative offices. Copies of these notices were sent to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger on January 8 and 24th and August 28, 2018. The public may participate at regular meetings in accordance with the bylaws and the applicable state regulations. Okay, before we go on, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming tonight. It's always nice to see members of the public and staff members come to a Board of Education meeting, and we look forward to hearing from many of you tonight. The next thing that will happen on Monday night is we will go over the approval of the minutes of the September 24th meeting. And now, Mrs. Contaldi will begin the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. With regard to the items under administration, there is for the board's review a listing of activities which occurred during the week of October 1st through 5th, which is known as Respect Week, as well as activities for the School Violence Awareness Week, scheduled for October 15th through 19th. Schools are involved with the Wingman program, utilize this opportunity to kick off student-based interactions to create a culture of acceptance and inclusion. Character education assemblies in the schools will encourage tolerance, respect, and kindness and will be taking place throughout the district. And these are perfect themes to start off the school year in a positive fashion. We also have a proclamation over here. The board has a resolution before it to designate the week of November 12th through 16th as American Education Week. And it reads, whereas America's schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing each new generation with the tools to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality, and whereas schools are the primary influence in children's lives aside from their families, and whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future, and whereas schools are community linchpins bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise, and whereas education employees, be they custodians, maintenance workers, secretaries, teacher aides, bus drivers, or librarians, work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism, and whereas there is nothing more crucial to the health and future of our nation than education. Now therefore be it resolved that the board would like to proclaim November 12th through 16th as the 97th annual observance of American Education Week. The board also has before it several revisions to our HIB, harassment, intimidation, and bullying policy. Periodically, the board is required to update existing policies to be aligned with the New Jersey Administrative Code and/or legislation. The New Jersey Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act, also known as PL 2010, Chapter 122, is a policy created in 2011 by the New Jersey legislature to combat bullying in public schools throughout the state. This act is an extension of the state's original anti-bullying law, which was first enacted in 2002, and there are 7 mandated revisions. Under curriculum and instruction, there are 2 field trips, which include the concert choir and the FCCLA. Professional development has documentation for staff members to attend out-of-district events. And under pupil and special services, there are out-of-district placements, there are several terminated placements, a few readmits, and new transfers into the district are identified on the report. I would also like to take a moment to respond to parent questions regarding student comments at the September 24th meeting of the Board of Education regarding maximum capacity for J.P. Stevens High School, current enrollment of J.P. Stevens High School, and what was considered to be a maximum capacity issue. So in some research that was done subsequent to the meeting, the auditorium can hold 800, the old gym can hold 640, the new gym 850, the cafeteria 600, the library 120, which totals 3,010, plus all classrooms have a maximum capacity of 26 to 30 students. Therefore, we are nowhere near reaching the fire department capacity of the school because our enrollment is presently at 2,519. So the concern was also the crowded hallways between classes, and while there's little we can do to remedy that, Mrs. Polakowski assures me that her fire drills run expeditiously, and she spoke with both young ladies after their presentation to allay any concerns that they had. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we will have the Business Administrator / Board Secretary's report. Mr. Michaud.
Thank you. All right, if you turn to your investment report for the month of September, you'll see that we received interest in the amount of $32,941. Our total for the year, July through September, is $87,352 in total interest. The next 6 pages is the Board Secretary's report for the month of August, followed by the Treasurer's School Manager's report also for August. And then the following pages are the resolutions that will be presented for Monday night's approval. The first one's a transfer of funds for the month of August. And specifically, I just want to point out a couple of things in here. The one for the audit fees, the $68,000. This is for the performance audit that the board approved a few months ago. We also have to move around some of the funds for the consultant we currently have, Mr. Saxton, and also the stipend that Mrs. Cataldi is getting for being the acting superintendent. So I took the money out of the superintendent's salary line and transferred it into the lines that both of those people's salaries are being charged to currently. So the total amount of the transfer is $296,000 in total. And you'll also note the insurance. I did move $50,000 into the school board legal. However, you'll see that the property insurance went down by over $100,000. So as you know, we did save $200,000 by moving back to the school's insurance group, and that's part of the shifting around was the school board legal went up, workman's comp came down, and property insurance came down. So I'm just transferring some of that around. Second item, we have actually the next 3 items are all grants that we'd like to have the board approve submission of or acceptance of. The first one's for $10,000. It's called the Ryan Seacrest Home Depot Sweepstakes. It's for $10,000, and we were awarded that for $10,000 for carpeting of the Martin Luther King School. Second one is for Advanced Computer Science Grant. It's for Edison High School in the amount of $100,000. We'd like to accept that one. And then the third one is one that we've had for several years now, the Special Olympics Play Unified Grant for $10,000, where they actually have some coaches and the funding comes out of the grant, and it's for special education, so it's a very worthwhile grant. Next item, the bid that we've been working off of, the cooperative bid we've had with Hunterdon County from last year expires in October, so they rebid it, and the winner of the bid now is Griffith Allied Oil, in the amounts that are listed here. This is off of the dock price, the listed Newark resale rack price, and then they have a markup on here of 17 cents on gasoline, and the summer blend for the diesel is 12.96 cents, and the winter blend is 15.19 cents. And obviously there's no taxes on here. We're exempt from federal and state taxes, so even though the state's going crazy with the gas tax, the board is exempt from that, so that's a good thing. Next item, we've been having some issues with our current contractors for picking up our athletic students after school. So we found another source. Delaware Valley Regional High School said that they could possibly pick up our students for the amount of $72.20 per hour, which is not that higher than Dapper's right now, but we're having a lot of problems with Dapper getting there on time. So we wanted to find some other alternative methods of getting those students to these events on time. So we'd like to be able to award this. They said they have 9 buses. They're going to have more open in the winter than they will in the fall and the spring. But whatever we get is better than what we have now. So I want to give that a shot. Item number 7, we received some. It's only $8,000 additional, but a couple months ago we accepted the extraordinary aid money of $2,213,000. It actually went up by $8,000. We got $2,221,000 now. We just like to have the board approve and accept the additional amount of money. Item number 8 is the non-public technology monies for 2 of our non-public schools that the Ed Services Commission actually does for us. And again, this is not our money; it's money that comes from the state, but we have to handle the paperwork. Item number 9 is a list of obsolete items that we received from the schools. We'd like to have those declared obsolete so we can have those disposed of. And number 10 is the bill list for the month of September in the amount of $19,954,201. And obviously this one's a lot higher than last month because now we have the 10-month people back, so the salaries are much, much higher than they were. And that concludes our report. Ronnie?
Sure that's who I am? Thanks, Dan. Thank you. I just want to say, no, Ralph, please, go ahead.
I have a question for Dan. Sure. I'm glad you brought up the bus situation with the after-school programs mainly.
Yes.
And athletic programs. I'm glad that we found something to help, but Delaware Valley is quite a distance away.
Right, and I did discuss that with them.
Okay.
And I asked them, I specifically wanted to know about 245 pickups, because that's where we're having a lot of problems.
Right.
Dapper is short on drivers, and that's the time we're going to pick up our elementary kids to take them home, so they don't have buses for that. I asked them specifically, 245 pickup, can you do it? They said yes.
Okay, because I'm trying to think outside the box, and I know in the past we've had coaches that went and got their CDLs and drove the small bus. But do we have equipment?
We have some equipment, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would that be a possibility?
If the coaches have a CDL license, we could possibly do that again. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, would we consider, Margaret? Maybe this question's for you. Would we consider paying for the CDL and
for coaches?
For them, if they want to get it, if they even want to take that responsibility and drive their small team, because there are teams out there that are only 10 to 15 kids on a team. You don't need a big bus. Something to think about. I mean, because not only are we board members, I think, are getting complaints about, us being late to events. I'm getting calls from other districts saying, how come they're showing up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it's a 4 o'clock start? The officials are upset. The administrators that are supposed to be in the building and at the site are upset. So I think we need to find some kind of solution, and I'm glad you worked on this one with Delaware Valley and see how that works.
Yeah, we've been all over Dapper about this.
Okay.
And because they are short drivers, they're telling us there's nothing else they can do. And I keep telling them,
Right.
You got to do better. You got to get these kids there on time.
Right.
But I can't put a gun to their head.
No, I understand.
And I don't want to lose them at all because then we have nobody.
Right.
Because nobody else. We went back to Barker.
Right.
We went back to all of our different friends we deal with. I've asked them, can you guys help us? And I'm telling you, there's such a shortage of CDL drivers in the state.
Yep.
None of them have additional vehicles. That's why when these guys came across and said they can help me, I'll take any help I can get.
Gotcha. Now, is Dapper paid a set price or per run?
It's so much per hour.
So they don't get paid if they don't
That's
do
correct.
it? Okay.
That's correct. If
Okay.
they don't do it, they don't get paid.
Gotcha.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Beth, I just had 2 questions.
Yes.
For Dan. Dan, under item 2, I just wanted to know where at MLK would the carpeting be done?
I don't know if she actually decided yet.
Okay.
But I did talk to Mrs. Wilton about that, and she said she'll find a place for it, but she didn't tell me where it was yet.
Okay. And item number 3, so we've applied for this grant. We haven't got the grant yet, right?
Yeah, well, no, we didn't get the money yet, but we need the board to accept it, because I have to send a copy of the board resolution accepting those funds.
Okay. So do we know what we're going to do with $100,000 for computer science, or that's just work in progress?
Buy buses.
We didn't get approval yet? Okay, all right, so this one's only to submit, and
Okay.
we'll apply for it, and then once we get awarded, then we'll have another resolution to accept the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say also that I'm very grateful that the athletic buses did a little better this week. They have come as late as 2 hours late to pick up students for meets, particularly cross-country. So it's been difficult, but fortunately, the teams with whom we compete have been understanding. We've had understanding officials who were willing to wait, and that all has worked out. As typical cross-country, everybody's low-key and all about working with the kids. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We will now go to board members' open discussion. Anybody?
I just had a few things to kind of add, and it's mostly, academics and just for, the knowledge of parents. I know many people watch this on TV. So the first thing I just wanted to say was that this year we used to have 3 levels in mathematics in the middle school, which was Math 6, Accelerated, and Honors Math. And now we only have 2 levels, and I know that a lot of parents were concerned that their child moved downwards, but I just wanted to clarify for everybody that actually we got rid of the lowest level of math, so everybody is actually, all kids are actually doing higher level math or the same level as, than they were doing previously. So they're not, so everybody is kind of exposed to higher level math. The second thing I wanted to talk, and maybe this is for Margaret, I mean, I've heard a lot of parents talk about, we have the STAR testing, and maybe even Deborah, we have the STAR testing at the elementary school, and it's always unannounced. So if we can just announce that, so that, the kids come to school, after having, a good night's sleep and, eaten well, and so they're kind of prepared for the test, that might be a good thing to do. And then the third thing I want to know is about the park testing, and if someone wants to opt out, is that really an option or not? I know that it's become a graduation requirement, but what if someone still decides to not take the test? Can we, I know we don't recommend that as a district, but is that something that can be done?
Parents always have a right to opt out of testing. It's not that we would mandate it. I would just caution, if any family were considering that, that they go on the New Jersey Department of Education website and see the listing of what will be required in future years in order to acquire a high school diploma in the state of New Jersey. I would just caution them.
Okay. And then
Anything else for Mr. Rivera?
No, that's correct. You don't know what's going to happen down the road with the use of the park testing. It could impact graduation requirements.
Yeah, I mean, what I was reading recently was that, Algebra 1 is a requirement. I mean, I think 9th and 10th grade mathematics is a requirement. But, but then I think there's still talks going on about
No one's required to take the park test, but districts all across the state are recommending that all students take it, because you don't know what, if down the road it will absolutely be a requirement for graduation or other attrition requirements.
Okay, and the final thing that I wanted to talk about was, this was also something I've been hearing, which is, sports, and I know that we have a lot of sports teams, and we kind of recycle the uniforms. Is there a way we can provide new uniforms? Because you know how when you play, you sweat and all of that, and then we recycle it to the next group coming in. So if there is a way we could, at least give new uniforms every time there's a new team or new students. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member? Mr. Errico?
Just continue on park, because I learned today at the elementary level, they cut 2 days off of testing the state. So now we're going down to, I believe, it's 2 days of language arts and 3 days of math. So they did cut back on park testing in the elementary schools. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but that's what I was told today via email. So teachers are a little happier. Students should be a little happier. Parents should be a little happier, because we do enough assessments during the year. So that's a good thing. As far as other things, I attended a few events, the Edison band competition, which was an excellent event with Mrs. Maroney.
JP.
Oh, JP, I'm sorry, yep. So, and I attended a Navaratri celebration at J.P. Stevens with Shivy, and that was packed wall to wall. We do have to talk about, that's the one thing we'll talk about, with the facilities guy over here, Mr. Brescher. Half of the lights are out in that gym, and Ms. Polakowski's being told they can't be fixed. So she originally said it was supposed to be done over the summer. Then they said it was the ballast, and now if you walk into that gym in the evening, half of the lights are out, and nothing's being done. So if we could check into that, and I'm sure Rich will bring it up at a facilities meeting. And then we attended a New Jersey School Boards Association meeting, do's and don'ts for board members, presented by the Bush Law Firm. It was 5 of us. Actually, we had a quorum. So that was a good event to be at, too. And that's it. Thank you, Ms. Maroney.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, Val.
I just had a concern when it comes to the 6th grade math. Going from 3 levels down to 2 is concerning for me because maybe I don't understand this properly, but if we're going from 3 to 2 and making the rigor of math overall more aggressive for all students, is that really fair? What about the students who are not that high achieving in math? Are we becoming unfair to these kids? I mean, that's just something that we may need to look into.
I mean, to that point, I will just say that I think why we brought it up was because some of these kids were, we always say that kids rise up to the challenges that are set up for them. So what was happening was that they realized that, or we realized that the kids who were in the accelerated, they were doing really well, when they were going to higher grades. And the kids who were at the Math 6, they were not really doing that well. So it's like, I think ultimately it's up to the teachers who kind of know how to address the needs of, because obviously there are a lot of different levels. And I think that was the real reason for doing it, was so that all kids are successful, and that all kids are exposed to the same level of learning, that we don't differentiate, and that too so early on, that that you are not good enough, or you're better, or you are the best, so that it's kind of more uniform learning for everybody. So I think we will know. Like I think we'll know next year.
I brought this up at last month's meeting. I had concerns about the current situation with the lack of approval from the county and the state for our interim superintendent. And, there doesn't appear to be any end in sight with any type of approval coming through. And, I'll just express my concern that, we have, 15 years ago or so, we had a situation where we had one superintendent who was let go for an unknown reason, and we were basically paying 2 superintendents, and we appear to be in a very similar situation right now. Not, I think Margaret is doing a fantastic job juggling HR and the interim temporary duties, and Mr. Saxton with as the consultant, but to pay 2 salaries for one position without a resolution in sight. I mean, we really need to put some pressure on the bodies that make these decisions, whether it be the county or the state, and find out exactly what's going on with their decisions so that we can move forward. Mm-hmm. I have to commend Margaret for doing, the 2 positions that she's been doing, and but it's just, in all fairness to the taxpayers, we really have to get this resolved, and we have to also start moving on finding a permanent superintendent as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Rivera, do we have anything coming out of Trenton that you know of at this time?
Thank you. It wouldn't be Trenton. Our request is to the county superintendent.
Oh, I thought it had to go to the commissioner.
No, the commissioner reviewed the salary cap waiver. That's a separate issue. We're waiting for the county superintendent to approve the terms of the contract. We have been in regular communication with the county superintendent's office. It is on the superintendent's desk to review, and we're hopeful that by the end of this week we'll have an answer either way as to where we're going to go. We can discuss further in closed session any other specifics around the contract or other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Teresa. Yes.
Okay. On September 11th, the township had its annual ceremony at Town Hall, and I just want to mention that the J.P. Stevens Chamber Ensemble, under the director of Matthew Lee, performed beautifully, and a solo trumpeter, I don't hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Shreyas Lingam from J.P. Stevens, did a perfect solo. He was on his trumpet. He was wonderful. So they're all a credit to J.P. Stevens and our music department. And while I'm on the subject of the music department, a gentleman who, for 40 years, was head of the music department or part of the music department in Edison High School, Winston Hughes, passed away. Winston Hughes set the table for every music teacher in this township. He was a perfectionist. And I just want to read a little bit of his obituary, all right? He began his distinguished 40-year career in music in Edison Township as a general music choral teacher at Thomas Jefferson Junior High School. In '64, he became director of choral activities in Edison High. In '66, he began a 4-year term as chairman of the Related Arts at Edison High School, where he served as liaison for the departments of art, music, and industrial arts. In '68, the Edison JCs named him Outstanding Young Educator of the Year. In '71, he became Supervisor of Music K-12, and in '94, he served as Supervisor of Music and Art K-12 until his retirement in 1996, and under his tutelage, the Edison High School Choir received numerous first-place class and overall best awards during his 10 years of choral competitions. And in 1977, he became the first African-American to conduct the New Jersey High School All-State Chorus. He was past president of numerous organizations. And I know that when I was packing up my LPs to take them up to my son who collects LPs, there were in there, when my son was in the music department in high school, they made their own recordings and sold their own recordings. So there were a couple of recordings under the direction of Winston Hughes. And if anybody wants a collector's item, I'm sure that's it. But my son has it up there in New Hampshire. In lieu of flowers, and I hope we do something for him, because he did, as I said, set the table for the music people in this township. In lieu of flowers and in remembrance of Mr. Hughes, if you want to make a donation to www.Little Kids Rock Organization, it's an organization, non-profit, dedicated to the expanding music education in public schools. And the address for Little Kids Rock is 271 Grove Avenue, Building E2, Verona, New Jersey, 07044. The world lost a great musician and a wonderful man, truly. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else? I have a couple of things. I want to echo what Mrs. Ward said about Winston Hughes. He was a rare individual. And one thing the obituary didn't say is that long after he retired from Edison, he continued to mentor students from the township. He gave private lessons to many of our youngsters, and all of the kids loved his style of teaching, responded to him. He was truly a gentleman, and I agree with you, Mrs. Ward. I would like to see something here named in honor of Mr. Hughes. We will have to work on that. I also want to reiterate that the J.P. Stevens Band Festival held on Sunday was just wonderful. And to see the machinery in place, to have all the parts moving, to put a festival like this together, the vendors, the parents, the tickets, the bands coming in, the placement of where the bands are, the food. It just goes like this, like clockwork. And then to see how people who attend band festivals understand that once the members of the bands take the field, that the audience has a protocol to follow, and that is silence during the performance, so as not to distract the musicians and the various other members of the dance and the twirling and the flags and everything else that they do. But what was extraordinary to me this year was that the performances of the J.P. Stevens Band and the Edison High School bands, their performances were so poignant and beautifully done. Both performances tell a story. And so it isn't just listening to the music, it's watching the entire visual presentation and knowing how much effort every one of those students, and I keep wanting to say athletes, because in a way to me, our musicians in the marching band are athletes, because they got to run to one part of the field and another. They have to know where to go. They have to know what line they have to hit and all of that. They're just incredible, and I do hope that if you haven't seen the bands perform yet, you do get an opportunity to see them. And Joey, right on cue, I was just getting to you. So at last month's Board of Ed meeting, this extremely handsome young man got up to speak at the podium, and he was speaking on the topic of a lack of information being taught to Edison students on diversity, particularly African American history and culture. And so as I listened to him speak, I thought about the Martin Luther King presentation at Ben Franklin, the Lindenau Day that we have that celebrates all cultures, and some of the new textbooks. And I mentioned all of those. And then I thought, after this young man sat down, you know, the one thing I didn't say is, even though we've made these additions, there's plenty more we can do. And I should have asked him for his input on where are we lacking. So as luck would have it, I mentioned this to Mrs. Madukar. She said, I happened to meet that young man at an event recently, and I got his name and phone number. So I said, what's his name? And she said, his name is Joseph Johnson. And I went, Joey Johnson, who was my student at Woodrow Wilson Middle School for 3 years. I was his vice principal. You mean that Joey Johnson? No wonder he looked a little familiar, but when Joey was in middle school, he didn't look like this. So I was so taken aback, but I wasn't 100% sure that it was Joey. So when I called him up the other day, I left a message, Mr. Johnson, this is Mrs. Maroney of the Board of Ed. And I told him that I really was impressed by what he had to say, and I think that we needed to pursue this in a conversation. And so we connected today finally, and Joey was, oh my God, Mrs. Maroney, I can't believe I'm talking to you. Because you know I'm still the vice principal, you know. I still got those suspenders that say I'm the sheriff in town. So anyway, but Joey, do you want to say a word about what we did discuss? You want to take the podium for a minute and tell everybody what we're planning to do and hoping to do?
My name is Joseph Johnson, and I live at 407 Durham Avenue. I'd just like to thank everybody who came out today. I know that I'm probably not in the position to say that, but this is such a great thing that we're actually here and talking about different things and different educational aspects, because without this, we cannot progress really anywhere in our education system. So this is kind of like the first step. So yes, Mrs. Maroney, as she previously attested to, she called me earlier today, and we discussed different courses and different avenues that we can kind of take within our Board of Ed that can kind of expand our minority representation. And one of the things that we talked about was a race and ethnicity course, or a minority or cultural awareness course. Something that can bring light to people that are underrepresented, and especially when they go into secondary education, college, so on and so forth, they need to understand each other and understand that people have different backgrounds And just because you may not have understood someone's background doesn't mean you can cast judgment on them. So maybe a course or a curriculum in regards to just coming together and saying, okay, let's actually learn about what has been historically implemented in our kind of society that has allowed certain things to happen and certain things not to happen. So that's what Ms. Maroney and I kind of talked about. I think that it's a wonderful idea. I actually took a race and ethnicity course at Monmouth, and it taught us that we come from different backgrounds, and everyone is different in their own sense. And it really kind of talked about everybody. It didn't specifically target one race or another race or anything like that. It was just something that an overall kind of combination of race, what race is, what ethnicity is, and how we can kind of move forward within each other. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I want you to know that I did speak to Mrs. Contaldi, Mr. Saxton, and Deborah Gulick, who is sitting right there waving at you. And I will introduce you to her later. She is our school officer in charge of secondary education. And she actually has a teacher at Edison High School who has been kind of digging around the same idea. So it may have been a very fortuitous moment that, you know, reconnected us after all this time. And Joey is a proud graduate of Monmouth University in criminal justice. So hoping to go to law school in the future and has great political aspirations. And I can say that for a young man who is so ethical and so motivated and so bright, we are very lucky to have him here. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much, Ms.
You're
Maroney.
welcome.
Thank you.
Can we clap for him?
Okay, that is
And that-
all.
Just one thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but Edison High School was awarded the Mayor's Trophy on Sunday also. Did you mention that?
I didn't, I meant to, but I didn't. So,
Okay.
yes, Edison High School won first place in the band competition and also got the Mayor's Trophy. So very exciting. Their performance was just awesome. It was thrilling, so exciting to see them do so beautifully. All right, so now we will move on to public comments. You are limited to 6 minutes. Please state your name and address, and Mr. Bowden, you may have first crack at the podium.
Good evening. Jeff Bowden, 2 Ethel Road, Edison, New Jersey, ETA President. I come to you tonight because there is something that's been bothering me now for over a week. The term district employee. If you recall, speech interventionists, math, reading interventionists, and more recently, many of the child study team members have been designated district employees. When people get moved, there's certain protocols that are followed when you're attached to a specific building in our district. When you're a district employee, basically you can be plucked at any moment, and to my knowledge, pretty much without board knowledge. One of the members I represent contacted me about a week and a half ago about a conversation they had with a supervisor that they were going to be considered to be moved from their location as a speech therapist at J.P. Stevens High School to a speech therapist at Lindenau and Woodbrook. Someone at Lindenau and Woodbrook went out on leave and someone at Lindenau and Woodbrook had gone out on leave, and this person was relocated to that, or reassigned to that location this past Monday. Now, I'm unaware of whether or not that's going to be discussed by you. As far as I know, when you're reassigned, it basically just happens, and we basically bypass the process. That is very problematic. Let me tell you why. This is a very dedicated speech therapist. She has been at J.P. Stevens for 8 consecutive years as the only speech therapist in the school. Prior to that, she was split between John Adams and J.P. Stevens for at least 3 years. So over the last 11 years, she has developed a history at that school. So I asked her, what did your schedule look like this year? Well, she taught approximately 67 students. 2 of those classes were self-contained autistic, 11 students who met 2 to 4 times per week. 2 classes were multiply disabled, 21 students, 2 to 3 times per week. And then an additional 35 gen ed students who met once per week or 3 times per month. What I found interesting was that some of these students, she has been their therapist for 10 years. She began with them as middle school kids in the 6th grade and continued until age 21. 10 years consecutively. And yet, within days, she was plucked from this position to fill another position. I just don't understand that. I'm told that the reason is that we've hired either another agency or an agency with a new name for services, and we are having a trial at J.P. Stevens. You know, where do the 67 students or parents come into play here? Do we even give that a thought? Some of our most challenged students who are receiving services from an individual for 10 years, and we just make a move like it doesn't matter. It does matter. It matters a lot to these families. In fact, the teacher, I'm going to call her a teacher because in the absence of, in our language of contract, when we refer to teachers, this teacher is receiving emails from her students now asking where did she go? She didn't really have time to pack up. In fact, she was in the school for a full month. Why are we making a move like this in October? This is a move to make September 1 if you have to make it at all. And it's about keeping track of a company. And that's why we're doing this. Then we've lost sight of what truly matters in the education of schooling in Edison, New Jersey. On a side note, to get off of that, also received many calls about district nurses, although I am hearing that we are hiring 1 or 2, which is a good thing. But the nurses in this district are running all over the place to meet the needs of our students. We need to do better with nurses. We need to find a different way. I know that you are proposing to hire 8 new administrators, which I think is great. But we cannot overlook the deficiencies we have in nursing, and also, at critical levels, our substitute teachers in this district. Too many of our regular teachers are being asked to cover classes now because we are short of substitutes. Why aren't substitutes coming here? I think it may be the pay. I think it may be how they're treated within the buildings. We do not get the pool of substitutes that we have used to get here in Edison, and it's a big, big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Ms. Ronan,
Yes.
I'd like to comment.
Yes, Mr. Besher.
The 2 things I'd like to comment on. I'm going to take them out of order, though, because the one is going to be a comment. The other one I'm going to ask someone for a comment. But when we talked about substitutes, one of the things that I brought up to the administration in the past is it seems that when we hire people in our district as new teachers, we seem to hire them out of district. They aren't from Edison. They have no affiliation to Edison. They do not substitute in Edison. And these are what the numbers have showed. Now, I've asked the administration to please correct this. If they're unwilling or unable to, I will convene with the other board members and we will come up with a hiring policy here in Edison. I think that will motivate people to actually be substitutes in our schools, because if you're a substitute and then you can't get a job here, why do you want to be here? So I don't understand why we've taken this route, it seems, for years now, and that's why we've had a decline in my mind, for the substitutes. Now, on the other issue you brought up, it's a little unsettling, I guess, about the speech therapy, I believe it is, for J.P. Stevens. And I'd like to see maybe if Margaret.
You can't, so this is a personnel item.
I was just gonna say that.
And I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Well, I'd like to know what.
Well, we really can't discuss a
Can we
personnel
discuss it
item.
in
We can
closed session?
absolutely discuss it in closed session
Okay.
immediately after
I would
that.
like to
not-
also.
right.
And I'd recommend we proceed to have that discussion there.
But can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
When
sure.
when you say like a personnel item, if I'm not talking about a person in general, because I don't care who the person is or what it is, I'm just wondering, is there a standard procedure to take a teacher out of a classroom that taught students for 10 years? I mean, I've never heard of that
I
before.
think that's it's a different question than what was raised. This was identified, I believe, as a speech therapist. I think we can, or the district may be able to pretty readily figure out who that person is. So if it's a general question about the board's policy around transferring or moving teachers, that's separate, but I want to make sure it's completely distinct from this person and discussing anything about them in open session.
Oh, yeah, no, the person I'm not talking about, I'd just like to ask Margaret, is this our standard procedure that we take, let's say, a teacher that's been teaching students for 10 years and we take them out of a class and transfer them?
Sorry.
No.
I would like to discuss it further in closed session.
Yeah, I recommend
See if
any
we
further
could
discussion.
resolve it.
Okay.
And make adjustments.
Very well. I think there are a multitude of reasons for the shortages of substitute teachers. I know just a few years ago, we had people banging down our doors to be substitute teachers, but many of those extremely qualified candidates have now gotten jobs, or they have decided that the pay is simply not worth the terrible things that happen sometimes to substitutes. And I've always felt that most often subs are treated like second-class citizens. And I know that some teachers do try to welcome them into a building, but for the most part, they're isolated and it's an uncomfortable feeling. So there are many things that maybe the district does need to take a serious look at, how we treat our subs and do an etiquette course in welcoming people and making them feel comfortable and helped when they do come in to work in the district. So,
Beth, I just wanted to add
Yeah.
something. I also think that we pay our subs much less than what our neighboring districts pay, and I think Jeff is absolutely right, that, for a lot of them, Edison is not attractive because we just don't pay them enough. So maybe that is something we need to also consider in terms of, when we hire, we should be thinking about the amount we are paying them.
No, and I'd like to say that the reason why I didn't bring up pay was that we had a presentation, something that was presented to us about pay. And when you looked at the general districts around us, we were within very close to the same dollar amount that the other districts were paying. Maybe Margaret could pull it up for us?
Sure. I can create a
Do you know off the top of the head what we pay subs, Dan?
If they're county certified, $80 a day. If they're state certified, get $90 a day.
I mean, over the weekend, I met a person who said that, she was not going to look for a job in Edison because we just don't pay enough. And she was kind of completely trained and everything, and she's
Subs.
gone through that whole, I'm
A
talking
sub,
about
yeah.
a sub, yeah.
Right, we had a document, Dr. Melly presented it, I'd say probably within the last 6 months that we had. If maybe we can find that one.
Yep.
okay, thank you. Anybody else like to weigh in on that? Okay, any further? Oh, yes, Matt.
Matt Revnak, ETA Vice President, 2 Ethel Road. First of all, as far as the subs, I didn't really come up here to speak about that originally, but since it came up and the speech language, I do want to emphasize what Mr. Bowden did mention. In our contract, you are a teacher unless otherwise specified. And in some of these circumstances, there is no specification on things like movement and transfer. It's all treated like teachers. But as far as the subs were always the pool to eventually become a teacher. That's what it comes down to, especially long-term subs, because they're also evaluated. So, but the daily subs, and it is cost-effective to be able to get subs, even if you have to raise the price a little bit. If you have 6 classes that have to be covered by teachers, you're talking about $180, rather than paying a sub $80 or $90 a day. So even if you raise that a little bit, you're still saving. And quite honestly, as a teacher here for a long time, I don't want to cover classes. I got enough work to do. Most teachers don't. So, it's taken away from the time we need to do for other things, prepping students, reaching out to parents, whatever. So, it's something I'm glad, hopefully you guys will take a look at. A couple of things that I really wanted to speak about, though. First of all, Mrs. Contaldi, in your report, I wanted to get up the last meeting, but it's getting late with the two young ladies that presented. J.P. Stevens, if you do come there during a fire drill, it's actually pretty incredible to see, because I think a Kindergarten Cop, the movie, when the kids are running out in chaos, that is complete opposite. With the number of students we have, and I literally do time it. When the alarm goes off, especially if you're given a test that day or something, so I make sure the kids get the allotted amount of time, we have those kids out and back in from the time it rings to the time I'm back in the room with a full class of kids, like 6 minutes has been the maximum. So it is very orderly. Teachers do redirect if we see a stairway that's backed up. I redirect the kids down to another stairway. It really is very efficient. Overcrowding is an issue, there's no doubt. The hallways, I had that discussion with Dr. Heelan a few years ago. You can build anything you want on a school, but you can never expand the hallways unless you're going to knock things down and expand it. It's just not feasible. So that's one thing I do want to mention. Number two, the gentleman that spoke, you did a great job. I'm assuming you're a J.P. Stevens graduate. I don't know if you were there when we had, and we do at J.P. Stevens, I know there's activities around the district as well. But for example, Black History Month, on a daily basis, and it probably had happened after you, our morning announcements and things.
I met with Ms. Polakowski, and I addressed it, and she was like, okay, I'm perfect. So then they started doing the morning announcements.
Yeah, with you. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Great. And by the way, this does predate you, I'm sure. Miss Maroney may remember this. She made it. I think you were at the high school when we had that. We had flags in the cafeteria of every nation represented. I believe it was something like 54 flags.
Oh, it was more than that, Matt. It was over 100.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for some reason 54 is stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
But those were representative of all the diversity at J.P. Stevens itself, and the countries represented from our students. I have personally actually spoke to the students about that. I think it's wonderful to be able to teach in a school and in a district that's so diverse. And I also come from a city originally that was the same way, Perth Amboy. It's a different population, but the diversity and learning about their cultures, their religions and everything else is a benefit. And, it's amazing because we have very few, with the diversity we have, occurrences of any kind of negative situations. The students get along very well. I think they respect each other. And that's something I think that's, rampant in, but I think we can always improve on it. I agree with you. The third thing I want to mention was what came up about the busing and the sports, because that was actually brought up to me, and Mr. Bowden and I have talked about it. I even reached out to the athletic director with it. It is not unique to Edison. I understand this is teams coming to play us as well. And you're absolutely right. There is a shortage of bus drivers. I drove a bus for 10 years in the summer. That was my summer job. And quite honestly, I gave up my license years ago because the state made it impossible also. It's not only getting a CDL, but they have something called the S endorsement you need. You have to go every time you renew your license, you have to be re-fingerprinted. And the reason for that is because that's an automatic background check to make sure nothing has happened. So really, they make you jump through hoops. And if you're going to drive a bus, chances are you're not going to go to a school bus type of thing. You're going to transit, because there's even a shortage of transit drivers where you're getting a little more pay. So it is definitely a situation that is occurring. And Mr. Urkel hit it right on the nose. I was a baseball umpire for over 25 years. It's very frustrating when one team is there, the other one's not. A lot of officials do a high school and then go to city leagues and umpire. Now you can't, you're getting there late. The students themselves are out late because, they're at the games. Now they have to go home and do homework, and some of them work jobs in the evening, whatever. So it really has a big impact on everything that's out there. So I commend Mr. Mashad for looking for ways also to come up with solutions to the problem. One question I do have, though, because now we have the bus drivers in district. Are they so overburdened, too, where they can't do these specific type of runs for the sports?
Yeah, we have 24 drivers, but again, at the times when they're looking for us to pick up the teams, we're still dropping the elementary students off. They get out at 3:30. By the time they get home, it's 4 o'clock, 4:30.
Sure.
And then they want us to pick up the teams around 4 o'clock.
Right, okay.
So
Because
it's a problem.
one of the things I actually mentioned, which is understandable, a parent of an elementary child, that's first priority.
That's
We know without a doubt.
Let him finish the
So,
statement.
I'm done anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Oh, wait, there is one other thing real quick. I'm sorry. These guys know, it's always one more thing with me. There's 2 teachers from JP Stevens doing the farmer's insurance for the scholarship, not scholarships, but the grants. Catherine Nee, Catherine Nee, and Matthew Lee. One's for the continuation of the greenhouse, and Matthew Lee was mentioned already with the music department.
Great.
So the month of October, get out and vote. Maybe we can get some more money for us.
Great, thanks, Matt. Yes, Carol.
Carol Badowski, 39 Jonathan Drive. First of all, definitely go online to farmers and vote for these teachers, because it's money that the taxpayers don't have to spend that are doing great things for our students. Now, there are 2 things I wanted to talk about. Before I came to Edison, I had a life. I taught in Long Branch, and I was a reading specialist, constantly being pulled from my students and endangering our federal grant money from Title I because I was substituting, because we could not get substitutes. Now, in Long Branch, right next to Long Branch, we have Monmouth University, which trains a lot of teachers. So it was really strange that we couldn't get substitutes. So my friend and I decided this was an issue, and we went to the assistant superintendent and the superintendent, and we created a substitute teacher recruitment and training program. And this was many years ago. We didn't have computers and all the high-tech things, and there was a lot of handwritten documents and a lot of going places to find things to bring in. But when we got done, we weren't being pulled anymore. Now, maybe we just scared them away and somebody else was being pulled, but none of the reading specialists we knew were being pulled from students. And so first we had to have recruitments at the colleges nearby, which we have many of here, where people might have the 60 credits and could have a superintendent certificate. Yes, they increased the pay by a modest amount. They, at that point, I think, moved it up to $80 a day, which you're talking, well, I taught here for over 20 years, so a long time ago, they were that high. But the other thing we added was we did training for our substitutes, because you hear, close your eyes, substitutes, you do hear teachers complain about, can you believe they didn't know how we do the attendance here? Can you believe they didn't know that you have to have a pass for the bathroom? We had the schools make up handbooks for substitutes, and we trained them in general on district policies, district procedures, district curriculum, which I know when I started in Edison as a substitute teacher, I had that training here. Kate Lutter, a former principal, conducted it. And I also went into a lot of classrooms where what was in the classroom, what greeted me when I got in there, was not what I was led to believe. There were not adequate lesson plans. And so one of the things we taught our substitutes was how to bring a tote bag full of materials that would help them in the classroom if there was not anything for them to do. The other thing was to have key people that will help the substitutes when they come in to make sure they can find the lesson plans and the materials. So it really did help a lot. And also, I believe it was Elizabeth, they have a building substitute at one point, because they had substitute shortage. They added up, and if they said, say, Woodbrook School, in a normal year, never uses less than 180 days of substitutes. You know, like every day of the year, somebody's absent, whether it's for training at the Ed Center, whether they're sick, whether it's personal, professional. And they found that by hiring people in the district, with the understanding, it was clearly in their contract, you are not going to become a tenured teacher. This is not, we will consider you for a job. This is not accruing tenure. This, is just that. You don't get benefits or anything. But they would be assigned to that school. And then when another school had a flu epidemic, they could tell them, well, now it's for today, you're going to go to this other school. They weren't always at the school, but they were basically assigned at one. And my second item is excuse me, Ramon, I know we cannot discuss a personnel issue. I just want to mention that moving specialized educators is not simply a personnel issue. It is also an educational issue and a quality of life issue for our students. So we have to look at it from 2 points of view. Do what you want to the teacher, and Mr. Bowden will deal with you. But don't hurt the children. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Bodofsky, I just wanted to assure you that 3 times a year we have a substitute orientation held right in this room. And we have a sign-up online, and we usually sell out because we can only fit up to 100 people in this room. It's a 3-hour training. So if you know that we sell out and we do it 3 times, that's 300 people that my department and I train. We actually have a training scheduled for this Friday. And at that time, we distribute the substitute teacher handbook. We review district policies. We have one of our professional development trainers, one of our teachers comes in and addresses classroom management, attendance procedures. We have the district coordinator for harassment, intimidation, and bullying, cover students' rights. As the affirmative action supervisor, I make sure that I cover that as well. So I think we have a pretty thorough presentation, and they walk out with tons of paperwork, and then we just hope that they get back in touch with us with all the documentation they need, which you know is going to be a little bit of out of pocket to get fingerprinted, get to the doctor for a man too, and all those types of things. So we're working on it.
Thank you for all those excellent suggestions, Mrs. Bodofsky. Who would like to speak next? Ms. Conway.
Elizabeth Conway, 20 Netherwood Circle. Just one quick question before I start ranting. When was the last time the substitute teacher salary was raised? Because I know it's been quite a few years that it's been $80 or $90. Can I start ranting?
It's been a while.
Okay.
I think you should continue. If they may not
That's
know
why
the
I was
answer. They
asking.
may not know the answer now. That may be something they need to get back to them.
He knows everything. But anyway.
I didn't know if you knew it.
It's a while. It's quite a while ago.
Quite a while. I'd like to just bring up something that Mr. DeStefano spoke about. I know you're going into closed session after this to discuss personnel issues. And I'm very concerned about the speed and path of your hiring and your committee procession. Overcrowding task force. We had a meeting in the spring. We haven't heard anything more about that. We had signed up for a community relations committee. That was supposed to come back in the fall. I haven't heard anything about that. Has a job description been finalized for who you're going to hire as a permanent superintendent? I know we seem to be really at a snag to hire an interim, and that's really holding up our process to hire somebody permanently. We need to move on. We've got a number of issues that we need to handle. Number one being the overcrowding and security. I haven't heard, we did supposedly hire some security guards for the schools. You know, I know you're not allowed to come out in the public and tell us everything that you're doing, but has that moved forward? It just seems we're at a standstill right now, and I'd like for it to move on. How's that?
That was fine.
Thank you.
Okay, I will address those questions. First of all, I asked Mr. Michaud to put the superintendent search onto tonight's agenda, so when we go into closed session, we will have our first conversation as to how we are going to proceed with the search. Yeah, we're going to talk about it tonight.
For the first time?
For the first time, yes. Prior to this, Mr. Shi had put out a questionnaire to the board members regarding the qualities that we would be looking for in a superintendent, and I thought that we were going to begin defining what we wanted, but then we didn't hear anything all summer regarding that. So tonight we're going to talk about the kind of search that we will be implementing, and then of course Mr. Shi will be back next week, and then he directs how we're going to proceed from there. As far as moving forward with the security person, I believe that we had quite a number of, Margaret, you would know, applicants for the security job.
Correct.
And those applications are being gone through now. And I don't know more of the status of that, other than, do you want to speak to that?
We developed a director of school safety and security job description so that we can post the position. We're currently collecting applications, and we have a district school safety specialist, which is Chris Conklin, and he's going to put together a committee and interview for a director with regard to school safety.
And can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is your time frame? You know,
Well, we
it's
just-
like, okay, let's get together
Right.
and talk. Let's develop a committee and let's do a posting. You know, we could be into January and February and still be talking about this.
Yeah.
Do you have
Not
a shorter
necessarily.
time frame?
Well, a job description had to be created, then it had to be posted for a number of weeks, and now that the time frame is coming to a close, I just updated the board, I believe it's this Friday. Once the posting is closed, then we can select which candidates we want to bring in an interview. I believe when the ad was posted, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Saxton, we were looking for a November 1st start date.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
But we really need to move forward on all of these concepts.
Right,
And
and.
Dan, you'll find out about that.
Right, and
A long
then answering the other question that you had regarding the overcrowding committee, Mr. Saxton and I have had a couple of conversations about the importance of bringing that committee back in its full force, because moving forward, in order to not just create the plan, which we have hired a company to help us do, an assessment of the overall district and what we actually need, then we are going to have to reach out to the public to get them to buy into passing a bond referendum. So Mr. Saxton has been energizing that piece of things.
Is there any way of looking at the facilities that we have now and see if we can rearrange some of the rooms for more adequate use?
Yes, that will be
Ms.
done
Mo-
in the assessment that we're having done.
Ms. Maroney?
Yes.
Part of my report that was given, my completion of reports after the half a dozen to dozen meetings we had many suggestions in it, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that. Also, not to get into your time, I'm also very disappointed and concerned about where we stand with our Class 3 officers. We promised the public that we would have armed officers in the building. I think it's something to do with the contract, which I think we'll discuss in closed session. But again, this has been dragging on. When was the Florida shooting? What month?
That's
January?
Valentine's Day.
So February, and we've been talking about it since. So extremely, extremely disappointed that we haven't delivered what we promised. I don't know who's at fault. I don't know if it's our side, the town side, the attorney's side, but from the town and our attorney. But I've been hearing so many different things. I just want it done. So we'll discuss it further in closed session.
And community relations?
Well, Mrs. Peng is in charge of that committee. Do you want to say anything about it, Shannon? Community Relations Committee?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, we try to have a meeting. I think it was me and Beth were discussing about this, but it was we scheduled something with in Edison High earlier
March,
this year.
last March.
March this year, but it was canceled due to the inclement weather.
Correct.
So yeah, we haven't been able to try to schedule another one yet, but we will be working on it.
We really need to work on it.
Yeah, I know.
Beth, can
I know.
Yes, Mr. Brescher.
Just with, well, I have some questions, but I also have just a statement for the overcrowding. we did have those committees, and we went through 'em, and we set all of that up, and we took that back, and we talked about what we needed to do as far as what we needed for a school. We then hired this other company, of which I guess everybody's aware, because we hired them like a month or two ago, for different aspects. One's doing that study to see how many students we're gonna have 5 years from now. So we know how many classrooms we're gonna have. They're also going through all of our schools and doing an analysis on everything. So I think the timeline that you're looking at is like in November for them to come through to show us their findings of what they have. And I'd say around January or something, we should have an idea to the public as to what we plan on showing the public, that we plan on building, and getting their input as to whether you think that it's feasible for us. It's going to be an entire inclusive package, you know, that we're going to have everything, just not the overcrowding, but we have things where we have roofs that need replacement, boilers that need replacement. So it's going to be an entire package we're going to come to the public and show the public and take their input on. And then what's left is what we would end up going out for like a bond referendum on.
The only thing that I can say is you need to reach out to the public and let the public know what's going on. They want to be a part of what's going on and have a say, and we need to be a little more transparent. And if we're not going to follow up on any of these meetings, people are going to stop signing up, because why should we sign up if there's no follow-through?
No, that's why I brought that up today, because, right, the public hasn't been made aware of what we've been doing. I mean, you know that we've hired that additional company, but you might not know why it was needed. I mean, you've seen it on the agenda, and you've seen we're hiring a company, but that's what that company was there for. To put this together for us so that we have a complete plan, because we don't want to go to the public with just half of a plan. We want to have it, you know, long-term, so we know where we're going and the direction we're going when we're going out for a bond.
It's just nice to show progress, that's all.
And one other question I'd like to ask, and because I sent an email, I guess, to the attorney with the security.
Thank you, Liz.
Did the township send us, they were supposed to send us a breakdown of what the cost was for those class 3? I mean, I probably asked that question about 8 or 9 times. Has Dan, or has anybody received any kind of breakdown that they're supposed to send us? I think it was like item 9 in their contract or something. Did they ever send anything to us?
I haven't seen the breakdown.
Haven't seen anything.
Okay. I mean, I know we had issues with the language, but it was also that breakdown. So we can't get anything from the township is what I'm gathering, right?
We haven't gotten that breakdown, but there's an update I'd like to discuss in closed session as to where we are.
Okay.
I just had a quick follow-up question to what Elizabeth had asked, and that's for Margaret. You talked about a committee which Mr. Conklin would be setting up for hiring of the security. Do you have any idea who would be part of that committee? Has he discussed that with you?
No, he is not.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have any idea who would be part of that committee?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
We haven't even finished paper screening yet, but I do need, as long as we're speaking about security, I would really like to end on a positive note, and again, thank the board for their commitment to hiring 15 additional security guards. I know that I've updated you periodically. For the public, you've seen the security guards get hired. A few of them, it did not turn out to be what they expected it to be. They've resigned, but we're working feverishly at replacing those. So we presently have 3 vacancies, and those 15 are in addition to the 10 that were already here. So I thank you for your commitment to school security.
Thank you. Sue.
Susan Campione, 8-shift report in Edison. Mrs. Conway asked a question about the payment for substitutes and when the last time it was raised. I substituted before I was a para. My son was a substitute for several years. I can tell you that in 2011, when the budget was so drastically cut by the town, the substitute pay was cut and it was never raised again. So it used to be that certified you got $100. If you did special ed classes, you got $90. And I believe it was $85 for a regular sub, but once they cut that, they never raised it again. And one of the other things I know that, and a lot of subs, you know, I see them every day talk about, we used to if they worked a full day, they did the teacher's schedule, and all teachers get a prep. So they had that period off. If they went and covered a class during that, they got extra money. They don't get that anymore. So basically, they're just getting their lunch off and working all the days, and other districts are paying more, which is what they say, and also not an opportunity for the younger kids who are looking for jobs are not getting the jobs, so they're going to other districts where they're hoping to get an inroad to get a job. So, but it is a problem, and special ed teachers, specialists, paras, they're pulled from classes, and you are breaking IEPs, but there's no choice because if there's no substitute, the kids can't be left with no teacher. So, you know, it does become a very big problem, and it's a daily problem that in every school. So, just so straight.
Thank you. Joe?
Joseph Johnson, 407 Durham Ave. Just to piggyback off of what Mrs. Conway spoke about safety, I was just wondering if are all of our students, faculty, and administrators active shooter trained?
No.
Staff is, not students.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute, I don't think we've done an active shooter drill.
We haven't? Then we're out of compliance.
Yes, you're correct, we haven't done it.
Okay. I think that's very important.
I think,
Why would you say no?
Active
No,
shooter?
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
We're required to do certain drills.
No, we were required to do a lockdown drill. This is coming
And
from,
active shooter drill.
this comes from Captain Shannon that was doing our security. I asked him if we do active shooter drills, and he said, no, we do lockdown drills.
Well,
So, I was gonna say.
I can say that when I ran the drills at the ELC, and Mr. Andy's here to testify to that, we ran, and we did this at Woodrow too, shooter outside the building, shooter inside the building. We ran those kinds of drills. So our children were told what to do in case of a shooter inside the building and outside of the building, down to telling them things like if you ever got trapped in a bathroom with an active shooter, to throw water on the floor and soap and try to get the person to slip. So I know that kids have gotten information as to what to do in those situations. So I think your terminology threw us a little bit.
Well, the terminology is correct, active shooters, maybe an administrator in another district, because you are by state statute supposed to do 8 required drills. 2 active shooters, 2 lockdowns, 2 bomb threats, and 2 evacuation or lockdowns.
Evacuation.
Right. So the term active shooter drill is an actual drill. And I would believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Contaldi, that all our schools are doing it. Our teachers and our administrators, I'm sure, are trained on how to do, what to do. I don't know if the students are trained. I mean, the teachers tell us, instruct the teachers, what do we do if there's an active shooter? And they know either to go hide in a corner, lock the door, close the blinds, shut off the lights, whatever protocol is done. But yes, I think we do that. Now, to Mr. Brescher's point, our police department is telling us that we're not doing them. So I don't know.
I also haven't seen a
just through the chair, I just want to let the district and interim superintendent respond on this issue.
Right.
And then the board members should respond to clarify, are we doing the 8 required drills that students and all employees are participating in? I think that's an answer that.
We get a report.
yeah, I would like to point out to the board that there is fire and safety drill report for the month of September included in the packet. And if you go through that, you can see that some are evacuation and some are lockdown. And that's in addition to fire drills that are also done, which is what I believe Matt was speaking to before, that they can exit and enter the building with all those folk within 6-minute time frame. So perhaps, Mr. Brescher, what the police officer was describing to you, maybe they are not invited to be on site. Having been a superintendent in a district, and my building was right next to a police department, they would always come over and assist us. But that was the luck of the draw because of where we were located. So they would assist in that regard, but we certainly practice these. They're required by law and they're documented.
No, that's my question is, you gave a list of what we have, and I've been watching that, I guess, for, I don't know, year and a half now. And I haven't seen the word active shooter on any of those drills in the entire time that I've been on the board. I have seen your fire drills on there. I have seen everything you did mention, and I don't say we don't have them. We do those. But the active shooter drill, which is something specific, which you just asked, and that's the exact question that I asked the captain that was in charge of our police. He told me no, that we do a lockdown. And lockdown is on there, but the word active shooter isn't. So maybe we are practicing them, maybe our staff is, and maybe we just need to change the word on our document in there. I mean, that could very well be.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I just wanted to mention, I misunderstood your question because I thought you asked if teachers were trained to shoot, so.
Wait, am I allowed to get another question? Or? Sure. Okay.
They don't do it here, though.
My next question is there anything in regards to mental health / wellness for students? And if so, what is it?
In what regard?
Like learning about mental health, understanding what mental health is, mental health issues, anxiety issues, relieving anxiety issues, relieving depression.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a very active program with Rutgers Mental Health, who we have them in all schools, and they come in and they work with our students who are having mental problems. Not only do they work with our students, they also work with our teachers who are showing signs of stress, and so teachers are allowed so many sessions before they then get referred on to someone else. It's a good program. Dr. O'Malley brought it in, I think, 2 years ago, and we have been working to expand it every year. So it's great to be working with on top of things as Rutgers Mental Health.
And just to kind of follow up, how do students get involved with that?
A student can go to his or her counselor and request help.
Okay.
That's usually how it occurs. It may also occur through a teacher or a nurse, intervention. They see somebody is struggling and they may go to that student and seek them out and see if they need help. And, it's been my experience that most children in pain, whether they're 5 years old or whether they're 16 years old, if someone addresses them and says, I see that you're in pain, can I help you? I never had a kid say no.
And I just wanted to add, and the district also has something called a gaggle alert, which is kind of, a software which alerts administrators to, things that they, just flags them that this is something, this kid needs to be really talked to and, figure out what's going on. Because there could be kids who really don't reach out to anybody, and that's kind of an involuntary way that where those kids are identified.
And my last question is a bit controversial. I just graduated from Monmouth, so we're kind of on the kind of progressive side in a sense. A lot of universities and colleges are starting to be more progressive. And is there anything in regards to a gender-neutral bathroom?
Again, we have addressed that. And it's very interesting that you should ask that question today because the Star-Ledger ran a very intense article over the weekend on the issue of transgender, particularly with children, according to the law right now, being able to keep from their parents what their choice of gender is when they are in school. And you can imagine that that is going to create a lot of difficult situations for teachers who are now essentially going to, you have a teacher meeting with a parent and you're talking about Nancy, who to them is Ned, and so there's some pushback occurring now from the parents of children who are identifying as transgender. We do have a policy on the transgender bathroom issue. I think right now it is that we ask that children who are uncomfortable go to the nurse's office to change for right now, because we have children on both sides of the issue. Those who don't want to be in the bathroom with a transgender child, who have equal rights to the transgender child. So I believe that's what the policy is of at this point, that they go to the nurse's office. But this is something, I'm trying to stay on top of it legally. you know, to see where it develops, because we all know that this is going to continue to be a very challenging subject, sensitive subject as we move along.
Are they told to go to the nurse's office if they have to go to the bathroom as well? Because you mentioned changing. That's changing obviously a big
I
one,
believe for the bathroom, they're told to go to the bathroom of the gender with which they identify.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Public comments?
All right.
Okay.
Closed session.
Okay. With that, yes, may I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'm gonna read it first.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Dan, I knew something was missing.
Whereas Section 8 of the Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Township of Edison as follows. 1, the public shall be excluded from discussion of an action upon the herein specified subject matters. 2, the general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Attorney-client privilege discussion regarding student issues, contracts for interim superintendents, employee matters, contract with Edison Township, and superintendent search. Under personnel, we'll be discussing resignations and terminations, retirements, appointments, leaves of absences, changes of status, longevity, experience stipends, head nurse stipend, substitute staff, avid tutors, paraprofessionals for MD, LLD, and AU programs. Title I, fall into literacy. 2018-19 translators for parent-teacher conferences, adult school teachers, adult school paraprofessionals, co-curricular appointments, and coaching appointments. 3, it is anticipated at this time that this above stated subject matter shall be made public at such time for the need for non-disclosure no longer exists, and for this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Do I have a motion? Ralph and Teresa, second.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yes.
Mr. Brescher?
Yes.
Mrs. Peng?
Yes.
Mr. Errico?
Yes.
Mrs. Madiker?
Yes.
Mrs. Ward?
Yes.
Mrs. Maroney?
Yes.
All yes.
At this time, we're not intending to come back into open session. I want to thank everybody again for coming tonight. Our next meeting is Monday night at EHS.
Yes.
At Edison
7.
High at 7 o'clock. And we look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.
Everybody.